Hello, I'm Alexa. You're listening to Adapted by Design. And today I have with me Lai-Jing, who is a product designer at a startup called Polycam and works as a Springboard mentor in her free time. Lai-Jing has helped 5 students with Springboard over the last 9 months and continues to show up for her students every week. There's so many questions I want to ask you about design mentorship and about being a mentor at Springboard, but I actually want to start by chatting a bit more about you. You actually started as a Springboard student yourself, is that right?
Yes, I was a Springboard student about 4 years ago in 2018. And then I finished around 2019 mid-year, I guess.
Tell me more about that experience. So what kind of led you to Springboard? Sounds like you did the program for about a year. Is that right?
It was the UX program, so it was a little bit shorter. I think I spent about 6 months.
6 months? Okay, yeah. And then what led you to that? What led you to Springboard? Why did you choose design? Why did you, I think you were in architecture before, so you're technically in another design discipline, right? But what made you want to switch into this new career path?
Yeah, by the time I got into UX, I had left my PhD program after a year. I was at UC Berkeley, which is why I came to the Bay Area in the first place. At that point, I have been in that field about 10 years, but a lot of that time is really spent in school because it's a very long program. And in the middle, you have some internships and jobs here and there, work placements, but it's a very, very long journey. And I actually realized I hated doing building design. It's just not my thing. So the reason why I went into a PhD program is because in a PhD program, you do mainly research and you just write a lot and read a lot. So I was like, okay, I'm done with this whole building design thing at that point. But then, as an academia, being in academia and being a student, and I kind of didn't really see sort of what's at the end of the tunnel for me, I think, at that time. And the stakes were very low for me to leave at that time. So
can you talk more about that? What do you mean the stakes were low? You hadn't really fully invested everything yet? Or yeah, talk about that more.
Yeah, no, I have invested a lot of years in it, but I was a lot of time. And a lot of years. The thing is, I was there as a student and I was on a student stipend of, I remember it was $26K a year. So it was extremely low. And I was seeing that the second year being in that program, I will have to teach in order to make the same amount. And in the first year, it was considered gift money. In the second year, it wouldn't be taxed. So essentially, I'll be paying more for a lot less money. And it's barely anything to begin with, right? So at that time, I was like, this is not really a viable option for life. What am I doing? And so I was like, I need to kind of rethink my life a little bit. There were also some push and pull factors within my program as well that I wouldn't go into too much. But I remember at that time, I was like, if I walked out of here, literally nothing will happen. The only way is up, right? Because I wasn't really making any money. I could literally work in a supermarket and make more than that. So that's what I mean by the stakes are very low.
Gotcha.
At the time. If you take out the sunk cost fallacy, then the stakes are low. If you take into account the sunk cost, then it's pretty high. So that's the reason why I felt like I had to jump to something where it's kind of the path of least resistance, where I could really utilize my skill really quickly. So that's the reason why I chose UX design or product design, because it's kind of a really good blend of design and research, which I've been spending a lot of time before already doing. I'm pretty familiar with the way that works, I guess. So for me, it was kind of a natural transition, but that's a very short blurb of what happened. There's a lot more that happened between that.
Thanks for going over that. That makes sense. Sounds like you're very more logical to the numbers. The stakes were low in that sense, but obviously, yeah. I mean, if you'd put 10 years into investing your time and energy into this other career path, that's a big investment in other ways. How did you discover UX and product design then? What was the first moment that clicked for you that you're oh, I'm intrigued in this other career path, this other sort of design discipline?
So this is getting into the part I just left out. So
let's do it.
So at the time I was working in research, right? So I was in academia, and a lot of the times I worked at publications. And I have in the past, during my master's, I was in New York and I interned in some publication or graphic design company that worked closely with my world at the time. And I was like, I'm just going to switch seats and I'm going to go to graphic design. So I actually sat down, I think it was summer, I was on break anyway, and I put together a little curriculum for myself. I'm I'm going to learn the basics of visual design and graphic design. I did a little bit in school too. We had one class in graphic design, not graphic design, but typography. part of graphic design, I guess. And I really enjoyed it. So I was like, that's something I really want to learn more about, and I wanted to go in that direction. And then when I explored that, I realized like it was actually pretty difficult, because if you're from that field, I think it gave me the impression I think I explored a little bit. It seemed like you had to have gone through like 4 years of training and be very, very sort of attuned and be in that industry. And I at that point, going back to school was not a viable option anymore. Also, because when I did more digging, I realized a lot of people in graphic design were actually moving into UX design. So I was thinking at that time, why go through the long way? Like, if everybody's going in that direction, I should just jump over and go like figure out what UX design was. And then I think I explored like Springboard and some, I think, General Assembly, some other boot camps, and they all like asked me to do, like an admissions project. And I thought, oh, this is a very interesting question. Like, this is a very interesting exercise. And I found that to be actually a lot more fascinating to me than graphic design, because I think coming from architecture, you're much more of a functional person than like an aesthetic person. So I think like UX worked really well in that sense as the like sort of the gateway for me to explore this field. Now I obviously do a lot more like UI and visual as well, but sort of functional aspect is still what's keeping me there. So
yeah, I appreciate that. It just sounds like you did a lot of research. You're like, okay, I know this like architecture thing's not quite for me, but I do like working on projects and working on like sort of like craft based or hands-on sort of like work. So you just like kept looking around and trying new things, and that led you to find UX and product design. I love that. Okay, so you've been a product designer for I think about like 4, maybe 5 years, like since you graduated from the boot camp. So how's that experience been like? Do you feel like you're like where you're supposed to be now? Like, talk more about, or I'd love to hear more about like how things have gone for you since you've graduated.
Oh yeah. So my first company, I stayed in 4 companies so far. And the first company I worked at was a high school college counseling company that was also a startup. They worked with Springboard to run the IDP project. That's how I met them. And so right out of Springboard, I got the first internship, and then I stayed on there for a year, which was very convenient because then I managed to finish before I reached 100% on Springboard. So that was very nice. And so I was fortunate that I had that 1 year of experience without needing to, go through that portfolio phase. And it was great. I think I used my first experience much more as like a portfolio building exercise too. Like, what can I learn from this, and how do I practice delivering value as a designer is basically the theme of the year, I would say, because I was in a company that had only like 10 people. Half of them were, I think I only worked with one engineer at that time. Like, only 2 of us ran the product. It was kind of interesting. And so there was not a lot of like, I didn't have a manager. It was all up to me, right? So I was like, I need to make this like count. So I really put a lot of effort into that 1 year, and I was very proud of what came out of it as well. And then after that, so in that experience, unfortunately, after 1 year, I was laid off. So that was a little bit sad for me, but it did make me realize, like, your job is just a job, and also that don't get too emotionally attached. But also you have to keep yourself very resilient. I was very lucky because I did say like I was proud of what came out of that experience. So it gave me a lot of confidence, like moving into my second one, and I was able to find another company fairly quickly. So I was okay. And in that second company, I was doing a internal tool for a interior design company, and I worked with a lot of smart people. So that was really fun. And again, there was no PM there. So that was another thing I managed to learn a lot of like sort of product management side of things as well, because it's really just me and the engineers at that time.
Sounds like a theme so far is like, you're kind of scrappy. Like you're learning in ways. Yes, hustle, exactly. You're learning in ways that you like weren't expecting to when you like joined, but you gain a lot of experience once you're put into that sort of circumstance.
Exactly. And then in my third company, so I then was like, that was also a startup. So I was like looking for a way to be in a more steady ship. So I found a larger company called Rocket Lawyer, which is a legal tech company.
I'm familiar with that one, actually. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, really? Yeah. So that was a way bigger company. So like I think the learning changed. It was a lot more about like working with a lot of people. How do you influence decisions and, all the more corporate type of learnings, I guess.
Yes,
And
yes.
that yeah, once I came out, I really appreciate that year. Like now I feel like everything I do right now is kind of like a result of what I've learned before. And I'm like remember what happened there and how to do better next time type of thing. So that was great. And then so I think the reason why I switched to a Polycam is because it was first of all, I missed being in a startup at that point. I was like, I miss sort of hustling with a small team of people and having more ownership, things like that. And the Polycam is actually a special one because the target audience is actually people, a lot of them are in architecture. So
Oh,
I actually,
interesting. That's perfect for
yeah.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's architecture in a way that's not like super it's not directly about building construction. It is a 3D capturing software. So it's not just architects. You could be an artist, you can be a designer, or you could be a grandfather that wants to 3D capture your grandchild. We have people capturing
Wow.
pets. Like it's totally fine. But like you can basically do a 3D capture of an object or a space. So I basically rely a lot on like inbound recruitment, and one of them was like the CEO of this company. And at that time, I was like, I don't know much about them. And then I told my friend about it, and they're like, "Oh, Polycam is really cool." And I was like, "Oh, so like my friend knows about it. It must be pretty okay." So like anyway, that's how I got into it, and I really enjoy being in this team. So
Wow, very cool. Very cool. Yeah. Working at a sort of like bigger, medium to large size company is going to be a very different experience than working at a startup. So it's cool that you like took those early kind of companies that you worked with and you realized like, hey, actually, I think I want to be back in that kind of space and like made that work for
Mhm.
yourself. When I was looking into like doing research about you and like looking into your background, I saw on your profile that making design education accessible is important to you. Could you elaborate on what that means to you?
Yeah, I think this is the question which like I kept me awake after you asked me that. I was like, what does it mean? Like what? Why did I say that? What did I because it was a long time ago, and I was like, but it does. But what does it really mean to me? And I think I had to like reflect on it a little bit. But I think it comes from the fact that I did spend a lot of years in school, and I understand like the power of education. Like it could be really transformative, not in the economic sense, but in terms of just like you as a human being. Like it opens your brain, and like it makes you feel like enlightened and truly alive, right? So I think like education is something I believe that should be accessible for personal enlightenment, but also to just be more resilient in life. And I think a lot of different fields can be more accessible in education, in terms of education. Like I would love to make legal education accessible, except I'm not a lawyer, so I can't, which is actually kind of the reason why I went to Rocket Lawyer. I'm like, yeah, like making the knowledge more accessible for people.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's an industry that could like use a lot of love from the design, from better design. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Fun story. But yeah, so a lot of things I feel like education should just be accessible, and I could only contribute to design because I am a designer. So that's one way to put it. But what does it mean by making education accessible is a whole other question, right? Because like I said earlier about my personal journey of transitioning into a different field, like I literally had to stop time and be like, I'm gonna carve out this space and like learn. But it was so much harder than being a student in school because you have like the status of being a student when you are in school. You are probably a lot of money in debt, right? You're paying a lot of money, but you do get like health insurance. You do get like a visa if you're from abroad, and you have a lot of things facilitating you during that time. Except you are paying a lot of money. So I'm like, there must be a way to do this without paying so much money. And it was like breaking my brain. It's like, why haven't we figured it out? Like, anyway, but I was in an opportune time in my life where I was able to do it, which then helped me move into a different field. It was just a problem I was pondering a lot. And I feel like if I look at today, even from where I started a few years ago, and it was not that long ago, we have a lot more learning material now. Like we don't have trouble getting hold of books or video courses or
Mhm.
or boot camps or programs. It's everywhere. We don't lack resource, but it does not mean that the problem is solved. If I say like, is education more accessible now? I don't think it is, and mostly
We have a lot of room to grow.
yeah, it's broken all over the place, right? And this is coming from a designerly mindset. It's like it's not just that. It's like there's a whole contextual situation that surrounds this, which is like, do you have easy access to someone who can teach you things, like who can give you regular feedback over a long period of time? Like, again, do you have health insurance? Do you have your student discounts? Like, do you have even tools, right? Sigma did a really good job giving Springboard students access to the educational plan, but I haven't seen anyone else do that. So like, even with tools and visas and, there's a package to being a student. It's not just the learning material. So I'm always wondering, like, how can we make this better? So I guess that's the short answer to your, or pretty long answer to your question.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, no, being a student is expensive. And then also you're in like not like a confusing time, but you're in a lot of uncertainty potentially, like, because you're starting something new, whether you're right out of high school and you're still like a teenager, or like you're 10 years later, like you're in your late 20s, 30s, 40s, like whatever it is. Like being a student is such like a unique experience because you're just exposed to, you're trying something new. And so it's like challenging.
Exactly. And yeah, just to add, like, I also think it's, so yeah, you have all the resources to learn when you're young up till like 22 when you graduate. Like, but I feel like education should be something you can always tap into in the middle of your life, whenever you feel like it's the right time. And there's just not a lot of support for people later in life to go back into education, which is why I think some educational institutions like Springboard, that's like a very good thing to have, because you can be any age. You could be a housewife and you can still like have access to this sort of support. And, it's not 100% yet, but like that's a step forward, I feel like.
So why is mentoring so crucial in a career like design? What do you think the benefits are? Because I think mentoring, that's like a way that I see, I'd say like I see you showing up and helping to make design education more accessible.
This is an interesting question. Before I did Springboard, I was also a mentor on ADP list, because that's also completely free, right?
Yeah. Do you want to talk? Not everyone may know about what ADP list is. Do you want to share what that is also?
I highly recommend anyone who hears this try it out. But it's like a free mentoring platform where you can make appointments with anybody there who put themselves up as a mentor, and you can make a one-on-one call with them at a time that, you can just schedule a meeting with them, which is amazing. I think I didn't have that when I first started, but it was quite interesting. So for example, there's this one time I was like considering a job for a design systems designer, and I wanted to know more about like how to prepare for an interview like that, which could be very different from a feature designer. And somebody, like, I think the design systems manager from LinkedIn was there. Like, I was able to make an appointment with her like the next day, and I was just like, this is the most magical thing in the world. So you can do that, right? Like, that's amazing. So I was there for a bit. I'm both a mentor and a mentee, right? It's basically a big networking platform in a way. And I've done other things too in the past to help other people who are very, very close to where I'm at as well. We just support each other and give each other feedback on our design projects. But what I see is that you can't really give people like very thorough advice or suggestions to their project if it's like a one-off thing. You can only go so far if you only have half an hour to talk to them about the project, and usually it is at the very end when they already have their portfolio done. People are less likely to show you things that are kind of midway or they're still brainstorming, still think about it. Like, you don't really have a chance to talk to them at that stage, and that's a big piece of learning that would be missing if you're also self-teaching yourself something. And I know that because I've tried to teach myself stuff, and I tried to be a teacher of myself. That was like very difficult. And I know I never felt really secure about what I was learning either, even the best of my effort. So I think I joined Springboard because I wanted to have the opportunity to do that, like, which is to oversee somebody from like the beginning to the end and see if that makes any difference. And all this is to say, like, I'm trying to, I'm also like learning how to give advice and to mentor other people. Like, that's a skill too. And actually there's, if you are a mentor, there's a whole course on Springboard to teach you how to be a mentor, which is almost the same as like if you did the UX curriculum.
A little meta there.
Yeah, it's very meta. There were 4, and I tapped into the wrong one, by the way. There were like 4 different like learning paths. That is all
interesting.
Yeah, and I was like, there's so many. And then I apparently there's one that that was the right one, that I chose the wrong one. Anyway, I'll come back to
Okay.
that.
Side.
But
Yeah.
I tangent, but yeah, so I'm really doing this also for my own practice because I believe in what I believe in and I want to be good at, like, at least be good at teaching. I think that's like a core foundation for me.
Yeah, yeah. When I reflect on the question too, I think that mentoring is so crucial for a career in design because feedback and design critique, like, so basically receiving feedback on your work is so important to understanding how to communicate and talk about your design decisions. Because really in design, all of our decisions are objective as it relates to the problem we're trying to solve, the audience we're trying to serve, the business needs. And so you can only really, I think, practice those sort of communication skills by like constantly getting that feedback. So I think there's like so there's like one aspect where like meeting with someone and getting mentorship is like those sessions where you just gotta like grind it out and, talk the nitty gritty design detail stuff. But then also there's all this like this other sort of feedback and conversation that's really important when it comes to just understanding like what kind of career do you want in design? And like, for you, it sounds like you were considering careers in design systems. And so it's like being able to have access to people who can share that experience in places like ADP List, which stands for Awesome Design Person List, I think is just, one of those great places that you can go to as a resource. Okay, well, let's talk a little bit more about the mentor experience with Springboard, because I think it's so cool that you've been doing this for the last 9 months. You've worked with 5 people over those 5 months, which, I think is just so special. So just to kind of like level set, what exactly would you say is the role of a Springboard mentor as it relates to their bootcamp programs?
I think just follow up with what you were saying, that is a big part of it, which is to practice interacting with a different person, I guess, in carrying out a project. You just need to hear a sounding board and practice like reacting to feedback. That's a really, really big part. How do you take it when somebody says something and throws a curveball, right? And how do you incorporate it in your project? And I think to add to that though, like there's also the visual design side of things. That's one of the reasons why I really believe in having someone a little bit more advanced than you in that field to help you out, because in visual design, it's a lot more about like opening up your eyes and seeing things. I think we all understand right space, alignment, right? And those things, like it's hard to learn on your own because you kind of need somebody else to point it out to you. And this is something that came from like my typography class back at school. I had a really, really good typography teacher, and I took that class because I realized everybody who came out of that class just did their posters better or just did their presentation boards better. And I was just like, I can't tell what it is. I just know it's better. And what is it about it? And it was like through that one semester class that like every week she was like teaching us how to like read space and like sort of read alignment, read typography, read the right space, like try to adjust and like move things around. And like that's how you get better. And it's something that it doesn't happen overnight. Like you just have to do it over a long time. And
repetition.
Yeah. And hearing it from somebody else, like even the other day I was like talking to one of my engineers. I'm like, so one of the few things I pick up is like that these margins have to be the same. And then he's like, shoot, like now that you said it, I can't see it anymore. I'm like, yeah.
Yes.
Right?
That is so accurate. Yeah, until then you don't you don't know. Yeah. You don't see it.
Exactly. I'm like, I'm sorry I ruined you, but that's what happens, right? So that's part of it. That's the skill side. But also I think another part, the reason why they have like an industry professional like teach the course is so that they also share what happened, like when you have the design process, like how does that translate outside? And one of the critiques we always hear about like boot camps is that there's like this fixed process, people like just follow it really blindly and like this double diamond, and it's like starting to get a little bit cliche, but that's what we're here for, which is to tell them like how in the real world like these things can change, and like how do you pick and choose your toolbox and do the right thing at the right time, and not just to follow things blindly, think critically. Like, so I share a lot of like stories about what happened outside in the field, and I think that's also very helpful for them. And also another thing is like I say, over time you're like helping them, you see them through almost a year. With the UX/UI program is like 9 months, and that's a very long time to get to know somebody. So I kind of like, I hope I'm good enough to support them by knowing their strengths and weaknesses very well. I think that's really cool, because I think this is the only platform I know of right now where you can do that. by knowing somebody for a very long period of time. You're like committed because it is like a formal program.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more then like about, so it sounds like with Springboard, or like with the Springboard boot camp, the students are paired with a mentor, but then there's also like an instructor and there's other people that are showing up and like helping them, but then they'll kind of come back to you every week or like maybe multiple times a week, depending on just what does that whole relationship look like kind of more technically speaking?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know too much about their interactions with their people in a program, but me myself being a student, I know firsthand what that looks like.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, and sometimes because I do know, I would suggest it to them. I'm like, you should talk to somebody who is like an ad hoc, the one-off, like unlimited mentor. There's like that unlimited mentor call you can make, right? So sometimes if I feel like they need it, I would ask them. That usually happens when I am not sure my own subjective opinion is enough, or I feel like a different perspective could be helpful here. They also have, I think what's really cool is like the Slack channel, which they can also tap into and talk to other people in the program. So you do have like a learning community. And I think they also have a lot of like dedicated person to do their like, I think portfolio reviews, whiteboarding, and all those other exercises. But I don't really have a lot of like firsthand knowledge as to what that looks like because I am one of the many people myself.
Yeah. And you took the program a while back. Yeah. I took the program a while back. So it's like things could potentially have changed as well. I guess just trying to understand better, like, so do the students, is there a set period, like, is there a set time that they can expect to meet with their mentor? Is it on them to schedule those meetings? Are they coming to you with those like ad hoc questions, or like, because you know where they're at in the program, you can kind of like, plan ahead, like, okay, I think we're going to talk about this subject. Yeah. Just trying to like better visualize, understand what that sort of experience looks like.
Right. Okay. That's okay. I get it now. So I think I personally have, baseline, it should be happening every week at the same time. They can reschedule and I can reschedule, but I think the best experience is when you have them regularly at the same time.
Actually, that's like that's similar to like how I see my manager. I work like at my job, my full-time job. Like I see my manager every week at the same time on the same day. So it's like you get into that routine. So it's like similar in that sense, right?
Yes. And also same here, like when that, and even when I was I mirror a lot of like what happened in actual like academia when I was in grad school. We do meet people at the same time.
Yes.
Normal expectation.
This is not unique to design. This is just like probably best practices for working with people that you like need to work closely with at work.
Yeah, exactly. If it's like a recurring, like that's happening because I think that the underlying principle there is like you build up a habit of doing something, right? So that you don't have to think, like it becomes like brushing your teeth. Like it's just a habit that you carry out every day. So yeah, so that's the best, because if it keeps changing, it's very hard to like get used to the rhythm of like how much work you need to do between each meeting, right? So that's one of that. And then between the week, the way I like to work with my mentees is very much like how I would do it at work. So I would have them submit actually a Figma link. So I actually tell them to don't export your PDFs, like no one does that. Just send me the Figma link, right? Then I can like comment, and I can do that really, really quickly. Because you can just look at it and the feedback loop is like that much faster when you can just directly comment on their documents. So between sessions, that's what I do to help them move more efficiently through the curriculum, because it's a very dense curriculum, actually. So there's a lot of like writing asynchronous communication as well.
What are your expectations of the students you work with so you can help to set them up for success?
I think I expect, passion is one of them. I think you need to...
You said passion? Mm-hmm. Why passion? Why is that the number one thing you just thought of?
I think it's really hard to get through not just the program, but the entire like career pivoting journey without really, you can't do it like half-baked. Not in this world, not at this.
Design is competitive right now. It's careers in design. Yeah,
exactly. It's a competitive world. Like I feel like you need to really, really believe in the fact that you can make it through that journey and not require too much handholding. That's really, really important, because it is, I don't know another way of saying it, but it is very difficult. And I think in terms of learning resources, like I believe going beyond the curriculum a little bit. So I do send them sometimes things that I feel like is is very good to know outside of the Springboard curriculum for the real world. Things like a lot of them revolve sometimes around just like basic tooling, like how to use tools, because much like most design programs, they focus a lot more on like the general principles of design rather than how to get fluent on a tool. And I think that's actually kind of important because like ultimately you are creating a project and you will have dozens and hundreds of artboards to manage. Like it will be clunky if you're not fluent with the tool, right? So that's something I would try to help give them support on.
Yeah, it's like if you're gonna be a chef, like you need to know how to use your knives and your cutting board and your pots and pans properly. Otherwise, like I mean, you'll make food, but it's gonna slow you down in the long run.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's a 9-month program with a lot to get through, and you don't want anything slowing you down. So that's like
Yes.
one of it. So that's a big part. So I think, but to do those like go that extra mile requires you to have passion. And this is actually one thing I think it's really I always tell people this. The reason why I left architecture and I told you that I really did not like designing buildings just innately. I was not born to do this. Was I realized that I have average intelligence. If I had to work with another person and we're competing 4 hours or 8 hours at a time, we're probably okay. But you may have heard this, but architecture is something that requires more than 8 hours a day. It's like
Yes.
there's a lot of all-nighters, a lot of like just going a week without sleep. And when I'm competing at that level, I just can't because I don't like it. And somebody who has a lot of passion and drive can make it through those like 80-hour week easily because they enjoy it and much more than I did. So I think like if you are really passionate about what you are doing, it just makes life that much easier. So I always like ask people to really listen to themselves.
Yeah. I went to design school. And so I went to school with people who were studying architecture. And like, I know firsthand how, from my friends, because I did not take that program, but I know from my friends how challenging that program really, really is. And, knowing many sleepless nights that they spent kind of like trying to grind through that. But yeah, the people who do, it's like there's something inside them that's really pulling them to do that. But like the thing is, I think that could be said for any kind of career path, like similar to UX and product design, like you're saying, there has to be this like something energizing you from within to really like push through, because it is really challenging. I think learning any design discipline from the beginning, it's a craft-based discipline, requires a lot of repetition. There's a lot of concepts and like frameworks to learn in order to be able to like both communicate about your design work and the decisions, but also like before communicating, you have to like make the right design decision that helps to solve the problem that you're trying to solve for. So anyway, I really resonate with all of that. So I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Yeah. No, I think you brought up some good points there as well. I think I also have it here as like I wrote some notes when you sent that question. I have here also like having humility and not underestimating the difficulty of the course, even though it's like a design course and doesn't have like a lot of coding in it at all. But there are times that are challenging, and a lot of it is like soft skills based and communication. Like so not to neglect the communication piece, just being able to articulate and write in grammatically correct sentences.
Yeah.
I think those things like not to be neglected,
Yeah. A lot of what design is as an output is communication. And it's how do we help other people better visualize a problem to be solved? And so that often in product design that comes out with helping to visualize the final, like the digital product or service, but it also comes out with like helping someone understand a framework or, a sitemap, like a way to navigate around a website or an app, a product or a service. So it doesn't have to be the nitty gritty design work, like that visual system, but it still is about communication and helping other people
exactly
see a future where something could look and work in this way. I also really appreciated that you said that you consider yourself average, like an average student or like an average whatever architectural student or just like student in general, because I also really resonate with that. Like I said, I went to an art and design school, and I actually had a professor, one of my typography professors, once tell me in one of our like midterm reviews that it was so long ago, but he said something like Alexa, you're a really good B student. And I was like And it was kind of true. I was like an A and B student in college, and I did get a lot of Bs. And I also transferred into art and design school like 2 years after doing 2 years at a different school, like non-design school. And it was so true. I loved what I did so much. I was so passionate about design, and I knew I wanted to get into product design that like it just like that it was just honest. It was like he was right. I was. And it didn't matter. And I knew that if I were to just stick with it and like keep going, I loved it so much that I could be successful at this thing. And it takes a lot of years. It'll probably take more than 9 months to feel like you're really good at something like design. But if you have that drive, like nothing will hold you back. And you have just as much opportunity as those A plus 4.0 students to be successful if you care about that thing.
Yeah, I tell people that a lot these days.
Yeah, it's totally fine to be average. That's the moral of the story. If you're average, that's okay. If you have the passion and the drive, that's what's going to get you to that next level.
Yeah, and I feel like increasingly in design, you're much more facilitator. I very rarely be like, I designed something and that's it. Like that's gonna be the thing that gets released. It's more about like gathering a lot of people's like wisdom to put together something that works. And it's more like owning that piece, but not like controlling it totally. So I feel like being a nice person and easy to work with is really way more important than how much talent you have as like an artist. Like it's not really that. So
Yeah. No, design and art are definitely very different, but it does come back to communication, like you said, because I think a lot of this is, again, about how we can communicate and help visualize the future of what a product or service or an experience could look like and how it could operate. Let's get back to the mentor experience. What's been the most rewarding experience as a mentor with Springboard?
I think it's like getting to know them, and like I think some of them like I've really become really good friends with. So like that's also really cool. You really get to have in this world, like it's hard to do that, I think, like to get to know someone really well. So I think that's really fun. And so that's with the students. But I think being a mentor is like way more than just like interacting with the students. Like there's a huge mentor community. So I really enjoyed connecting with other mentors as well. And Nick, our mentor ops person, has a office hour, which like that's like a place to get to know other people. So it's like a real community. I think like what Springboard has given me is that like as both a mentee and then a mentor, I got to be involved in a really cool community of people, and I really enjoyed that.
Awesome. I love to hear that. Lai-Jing, thank you so much for sharing with us today about your experience as a mentor and getting into design. It's so great chatting with you. I think everyone now would be so excited to, potentially get paired with you if they, took on the boot camp with Springboard. I certainly would love to work with you. Us being our average B student designers. Is there anything else? Is there anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
No, I really enjoyed speaking with you, and you are not an average B student. That's great.
I was back in the day, but I took my passion very seriously with design, and I do feel like I've come a long way. So I've been a designer, I think, for over 10 years now professionally. So it took a lot of time and a lot of repetition, but I definitely was back like 10 years ago. If people wanted to like connect with you or learn more about you online, where can they go?
Oh yeah. Well, my name is fairly unique, so you can find me on LinkedIn. I think there's always only one of me because my name is like very unique. So yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, LinkedIn.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. It was great chatting with you, and we'll talk again soon, I'm sure.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Bye.
Bye.
Huge thanks to Lai-Jing for coming on the show today and sharing about her experience switching into product design and giving us some good things to think about when it comes to setting yourself up for success when working with a mentor. If you're feeling the fire like Lai-Jing and I did when we were first learning about product design, then I've got a very special offer for you. Springboard offers a 9-month UI UX design bootcamp with one-on-one mentorship, real-world design projects, and personalized career coaching. And it comes with a job guarantee. Use the code Adaptive by Design to get $1,000 off enrollment for design bootcamps with Springboard. You can find more information in the description below. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe so you can stay up to date as new episodes drop. Again, my name is Alexa, and you've been listening to Adaptive by Design, living the UX life. I'll see you next time.